to come and present the statement on the outcomes of the National Executive Committee. Over to you, DSG.
Thank you. Do I have to stand there?
Yeah.
I'm so short.
You can stand there, DSG. DSG.
Can you see me, right? You can. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. We met for 3 days as the National Executive Committee of the ANC, and our discussions were, we looked at implementation of our resolutions on a renewal of our organization. And as you all know, we're in the process of running BBGMs throughout the country. We're trying to get to the point where regions can go to conferences and the provinces that are outstanding and due for conferences to have their conferences as a matter of urgency. So we've done quite well. We've achieved over 1,400 BBGMs in a fairly short space of time using our new system of membership, which allows the branches to control the system, and it doesn't flow into too many disputes about wrongdoings at another level of the organization. We also looked at fairly in-depth preparations for local government elections. So we will be going to local government elections. Apparently, a date has been announced, but it has not been promulgated as yet, towards the end of October this year. And we are then activating our elections machinery to begin to pull itself together and start working on messages. A baseline research is going to be done. And also looking now at the whole process of candidate selection. And we have implemented the decision to appoint a elections committee, which is led by Kgalema Motlanthe. It's independent of all elected structures. It acts on its own. It will have its own infrastructure. And these are the people who will give the guidelines and how things are to be run for local government elections, with quite a tight understanding of the caliber of person that we would like to see emerging from community-based interventions on who a councillor must be. We also looked at the amendment to Section 25 of the Constitution and spent almost a day discussing mainly what the ANC's views would be on that. As you know, that is a very important matter. It is a parliamentary process, but that doesn't mean that political parties cannot have their own views and discuss those views. We did discuss the implementation of the step-aside resolution and implemented it, confirmed its implementation. And we took into account several reports of the Integrity Commission, which had provided reports for 2020 and none yet for 2020, well, 2 for 2021. So the NEC began by looking at the fact that this is the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Constitution by the Constituent Assembly, and the genesis of the Constitution in the African claims, as well as the Freedom Charter. And ANC will respect, uphold, and advance our country's Constitution. We were very clear about that in all our discussions. ANC members must live according to the values of social justice, respect for humanity, equality, selfless service, and adherence to the rule of law, commitment to build a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, and prosperous South Africa. Our priorities then for 2021, firstly, to act together with all South Africans to defeat the COVID-19 pandemic. We're also engaging in an international campaign which looks at vaccine imperialism and working with organizations, and at the government level, I suppose government is working with other countries to try and get a waiver to the problems that disallow countries from, in fact, producing their own vaccines. Thirdly, to forge ahead with a fundamental renewal of the ANC in line with its core mandate and values. to strengthen developmental and participatory local government and achieve a decisive win in the upcoming local government election. We're very aware of the difficulties we have at local government level. We're not hiding anything under a bush. We're looking at what to do and how to do it, and to build a better world and a better Africa. So we also wanted to say to all of you that we want to defeat COVID-19 and applaud all frontline workers. We think our government has done a good job in terms of holding down the pandemic. We're not sure if a third wave is on its way, but whether it is or not, we still believe that people need to adhere to the COVID-19 regulations as best as possible. Continue to the second phase of the Alliance COVID-19 campaign is to focus on adherence to the prevention and participation in mass vaccination campaign that has begun now, and on the 17th we understand the next batch of vaccinations will begin. I'm saying that it is an alliance campaign because we have agreed with our allies, both COSATU and the SACP, that we will work together on this as a campaign. Vaccines and treatment should be sourced from all available sources. This is the call we made to our government, including BRICS partners such as Russia and China, in conformity with our country's laws and regulations. An initiative by South Africa and India to fight for waiver and the to waiver at the WTO, ensure equitable access to COVID vaccines, and support the role played by our president in as an AU champion on COVID-19, and to support our BRICS partners, India and Brazil, who are terribly hard hit. On the land reform and redistribution debate, we looked at the process of amending Section 25, which the ANC's view was it needs to be more explicit to make provision for the expropriation of land without compensation. Even though currently there is a law that allows you to expropriate land for public use, we believe that the Constitution itself needs to have that embodied in its wording. We reaffirmed our National Conference resolution that land reform must take place in a manner that strengthens the agricultural sector, improves economic growth, and significantly tackles inequality, poverty and unemployment, and primarily land hunger in our country. The NEC received a report by a group of people that we had put together, led by Comrade Matthew Sposa, to look at very specifically the amendment and the wording on the amendment. I'm not going to go through that. I think it's quite technical. It's safe to say that our primary objective is to have an explicit way in which the Constitution is articulated. So that report is still, as you know, a matter of debate, will be a matter of debate in Parliament, and our MPs will participate. We will continue to look at how the debate goes and how we need to work with other political parties in order to strengthen what we want out of that debate. And a lot of what we got came from the public participation of people in various parts of the country. On local government, we still believe that we have to strengthen the concept of the district development model, which integrates government's service delivery from national, provincial, and local, instead of the current mechanism which separates local government as an entity from the other spheres of government formally in a very many different ways. And this has created blockages and also has in many ways not allowed us to meet our obligations to communities to deliver basic services, to ensure popular participation, and to drive local economic development. Empowerment of cooperatives and SMMEs, we spent a bit of time discussing that. It's a pity that those are the clips that were not leaked, unfortunately, just on a lighter note, because that was the much more content-worthy part of our 3 days together. We looked at the empowerment of youth and women and the promotion of more skills development to enable people to participate more directly in making local government a working entity. That we stress that all ANC members and structures must indeed ensure that as we prepare for BGMs and community meetings to elect candidates, we are deliberate in selecting candidates with the necessary capacities, experience, and skills, and who are really people who know what hard work means, and who will be able to service the people and practice all forms of ethical conduct. The NEC also stressed the importance of the principles of continuity, gender equality, and the representation of young people in the local government structures. I must say that the ANC Youth League now has a voice, very powerful voice of 2 women who attend the NEC meetings, and they were very vocal about the fact that there needed to be a much younger cadre of people who represented people in wards at local government level. On unity, renewal, and the state of the ANC, this NEC discussed in detail the state and cohesion of our organization. We noted with concern the continued factional divisions and divisive public pronouncements which make the impression of an organization in crisis. Fundamental to these challenges is the critical process of implementing the mandate of the 54th National Conference to build unity of principle in action combined with the task of ensuring organizational and societal renewal. As you know, a portion of a clip that one of our provincial chairs that was making a statement is the only thing that resonated in the media over the weekend. Let me dispel the fact that he did not continue to talk about how the ANC is building itself from the ground up. So the clip that went out from Stan Matabati is was very, what do you call it, when people redirect a message. It redirected a message where he was trying to explain in the meeting the fact that it would appear that we are full of, disagreements and so on, and yet it is the ANC is the only political party that boldly goes to the Zondo Commission and puts itself out there and is asked questions and explains what it is doing and is accountable publicly in a manner that no other political party has done. The ANC is the only political party that is on the ground currently building back its structures, even though COVID had decimated our capacity to energize, but it didn't decimate the will of the members of the ANC to participate in the body of the organization. So our work is continuing, and the meeting welcomed the reports of organizing an election subcommittee in this regard, a very lengthy report, which was very detailed, and I don't think you want us to share that with you necessarily. Since the last NEC meeting, over 2,000 branch general meetings have been held, and regional conferences have started. Local structures and regions are also continuing the campaign against COVID-19. I just want to say that we don't on an everyday basis come to the media and say, we've now launched branch XYZ, or we've this region, 2 regions in the Northern Cape were able to hold conferences over the weekend. And we would hope that at some point that would interest you, so that you know that there is an infrastructure at work that is beginning to build itself back. We are very committed to bringing the mandate of the 54th to restore the unity, renewal, and integrity of our organization, despite the very difficult and complex challenges of our current period. In the spirit of criticism and self-criticism, we reflected on our modus operandi and our conduct of NEC members, and most members and NEC members agreed to adhere to organizational protocols and practices, including the notion of collective leadership, that none of us in this ANC acts on our own. We take mandate from the National Working Committee, the NEC of the ANC. So none of us are able to, in fact, act independently. Everything we do comes from a mandate. We express concern about a concerted and well-resourced campaign to sow division and confusion in the ANC. And in this regard, we're referring very specifically to General Mudau, as well as RET forces, which is clearly just a faction, raising its head in the ANC throughout the country. But it is the kind of things that they say that are quite important to note. And the NEC mentioned these two in particular in our deliberations. We were concerned about the leaks and other issues that happened over the weekend. A very interesting clip, a very brilliant input was made by a former president of the ANC, Comrade Thabo Mbeki. That clip gave half a quarter of what he said and did not conclude what he talked about, which was the fact that we're a constitutional democracy, and what these detractors are trying to do is to shift the focus to a parliamentary democracy, which takes away the rights of people in so many different ways, and which reasserts what isn't what we wanted and where we started. And the criticisms that he leveled against these detractors in his speech were well-resourced criticisms, not based on emotional finanglings, but based on research and readings that he had done. The rest was left out. And the impression to the public is that Comrade Thabo Mbeki came and said that is the ANC still alive? He was asking a question that he answered in the debate. Very sad that we would be treated with such disrespect through leaks that then get published all over the place. So we did implement the step-aside decision of the ANC, and with great sadness, we had to agree to a temporary suspension, and I want to really emphasize this word, temporary suspension of the Secretary General of the ANC. And the suspension will be reviewed from time to time, but it is entirely dependent on the court case that the SG is facing, and was never only about the Secretary General. There are numbers of other people in provinces, as well as another member of the NEC who has also been temporarily suspended. The unfortunate focus on one individual creates the impression that there was a focus on one individual. It wasn't like that. And it was exercising an ANC constitutional obligation, Rule 25.70. It exercised a resolution of the 54th Conference and several other ANC decisions that have taken place in the last year or so. We adopted terms and conditions that would cover what happens when a person is an office bearer, a member of parliament, a minister, an MPL, councillors, and so on, and what would happen to them if they step aside, so that we were not depriving people of their livelihood. And we want to make that very clear. But we were simply asking them to step aside in the space that they were and not carry out the duties and responsibilities of their office, represent the organization publicly or in any other forum, make public pronouncements on matters relating to the organization, engage in mobilization of ANC structures, any other organizations or individuals. During the step-aside period, a public representative may not occupy any executive office or other position of responsibility in the legislative body of caucus to which they belong. Similarly, the NEC confirmed that in light of the temporary suspension of the Secretary General, the DSG, in accordance with Clause 16.9 of the ANC Constitution, carry out the functions entrusted to the SG by the National Conference, the National Council, and the NEC and the Working Committee. I want to make it very clear, I am not the Secretary General of the ANC, nor am I an acting Secretary General of the ANC. I'm the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, carrying out the functions as prescribed in Rule 16.9 of the clause of the ANC. The Secretary General is temporarily suspended until the matters of his court case come to finality. I hope we all can understand that, because I've also listened to the media narrative that is rolling. And it's a very disempowering narrative, if I may say so. We also discussed the question of a letter of suspension that the SG had issued on the president of the ANC, and we agreed that there was no authority or mandate from any structure in the movement for such a decision to have been taken. The NEC agreed that such conduct was completely unacceptable and a violation of the rules, norms, and values of the ANC. We have been instructed to request the SG to apologize publicly to ANC structures and members within a set time frame. So if he fails to do so, the ANC will institute disciplinary procedures in accordance with the ANC constitution. We're confident that the SG will rise to the occasion and that he will follow the dictates of the ANC constitution. We discussed the ANC's two submissions to the State Capture Commission, of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. I always get it wrong, because that is what it's called. We believe that our president acquitted himself extremely well, answered the questions he was asked in a manner that was completely transparent, and gave information that will assist the commission. Similarly, so did the national chairperson of the ANC, who acted as a Secretary General of the ANC during the period under review. We were given an update, as I've already said, on BBGMs and so on. And we talked about local government elections. I want you to understand, as fellow South Africans, that we will be working incredibly hard to win every ward in the country. We're doing very well at the level of by-elections. Contrary to the view that the ANC is losing support, we find that we are actually gaining support in DA areas as well. We've taken 2 wards in the last by-election from the DA, for which we're very happy. We're looking at how we can have a National General Council, under what conditions, and how that would be managed practically, given COVID-19 rules and regulations. We will be giving a report to the next NWC as we go along, but clearly we have to look at the challenges that mitigate in favor or against us having a public NGC, as we would normally have done in the past with 7,000 people attending. It might have to take a completely different form. We had a discussion about the Free State, and our priority there is to pursue a political solution. And the NEC had appointed Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe to lead talks in the province between the factions that were fighting. We seem to be making some progress in that regard. On the ANC Youth League task team, which has come into the media space for the wrong reasons, the NEC reverted to the fact that a person who is 35 years or older cannot be on the NYTT, and it's affecting approximately 6 people, and all of those 6 people will be requested to not participate in the NYTT, because that would be wrong, and that is being done by the NYTT as we speak. We're also verifying people's birth dates and all the many accusations that are flying around, so that we give the truth as it is, no matter how difficult it might be to swallow. We looked at what happened in Mpumalanga. There was a bit of violence, not a bit of violence, quite serious violence in April. A task team was set up, which I led, and I'd asked Comrade William Mkhize to continue with, to look at what causes the violence in that particular province, The work is ongoing. What we have agreed is that we will not stop this province from going to a provincial conference, and we will assist the Nkomazi sub-region, where it seems the real hotspot is, to overcome some of the factional issues that cause violence in the area. On the Northwest, let me just say that the NEC discussed quite a bit that the Northwest has been experienced instability for too many years. Some of us could recall that this goes back 40 years, and that there is a grave impact on organization, governance, and service delivery. We are insisting that the IPC, the Interim Provincial Committee, must be allowed to continue to discharge its mandate. And we would hope that we can take this province as a matter of urgency to a provincial conference and elect leaders. However, we will continue to work with that province to undermine the consistent breakages that occur, the kind of rhetoric that doesn't seem to end. This is the 60th anniversary of of Mkhonto weSizwe. We will be having in December, on December the 16th, a celebration to commemorate the 60 years. Just to remember that MK was set up, but not only by the ANC, but a combination of the alliance. It was MK, it was the ANC, SACTU, as well as the SACP that was involved in the running and the operations of MK. So it has to be a combined celebration of all of us. I think that's. I think also we discussed the questions of patriarchy and misogyny, not only in the ANC, but generally there seems to be an upward language problem, women being attacked in a very derogatory manner on Twitter, on Facebook. The general respect in terms of language usage against women seems to be much, much more negative in our society at large. And we've decided that we will continue and upgrade our work in terms of the gender-based violence, as well as femicide. We also discussed some of the matters that were raised by our allies, such as non-trading holidays for May Day, for Freedom Day and election days. We could not really make a determination on those because that is a matter that we have to ask the government to do the proper processes in NEDLAC and public hearings to consider. We talked about Mozambique, expressed concern for what is happening in the northeast corner of Mozambique. An analysis that we did make was some of the issues also relate to socioeconomic conditions and the poverty levels of people in that part of our continent. We looked at, we have a very good relationship with Sinn Féin, and we are supporting Sinn Féin's bid for a united Ireland. And there's a group of South Africans who is assisting Sinn Féin at the moment to look at how we could assist them. We discussed Cuba. We congratulated the new leader of the Cuban Revolution. We continue to work with Cuba and very grateful for the Cuban doctors who support us in our country, as well as the prospect of Cuban engineers who might be able to support us with some of our water difficulties. We discussed Palestine and the recent attack on the Palestinians outside of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the removal of people, and condemned the actions of the government of Israel in this regard. The NEC was closed by our president, who said, "We must remember that the trust and support of the South African people should never be taken for granted for as long as we are divided as a leadership, for as long as we fail to act against corruption, and unless we put the needs of our people first, we will struggle to restore the credibility of the ANC. The people of South Africa are looking to this leadership to provide direction, to decisively respond to the challenges in our country and to accelerate the radical economic and social transformation of our society. Can I just repeat that? The President says, and to accelerate the radical economic and social transformation of our society. So there's no need for a faction to be making this call when it is a core call of the ANC. The NEC meeting has provided firm foundation for the work that we have to do. Our task now is to build on the progress we have made and fulfill the expectations of our people. Thank you very much for your attention. It's long. 3 days.
Thank you very much, DSG. We have got a WhatsApp line where other mediums that could not come here are allowed to raise their questions. So, Amos, you just consolidate all the questions that are coming on the WhatsApp line. Okay. You can start there. No, it's not a problem. It's me who's directing the meeting. Can you start?
Good afternoon.
No, wait. I'm coming to you. Can you start and ask? All of you are going to have a chance to ask.
Thank you very much. The statement says that the ANC Secretary General needs to apologize in a certain period of time. What period of time is that? So when should he apologize by? The second question that I have is related to local government elections. You say that the date has not been promulgated. Is that a suggestion that it may shift given the circumstances? Is that what the President told the meeting? And then the third question that I had is just on the step-aside guidelines. There was a part in what the President said yesterday that said that people will step aside on full pay. I just want to know, how will the ANC reconcile the rules of Parliament and legislatures? Are people just going to have these extended holidays paid for by taxpayers? Thank you very much.
Okay. Bali.
Hi, DSG Bali from Newsroom Africa. I just want to ask, we saw from the SG last week saying that he is appealing the decision for him to step aside. How far is that process? Can he even appeal the suspension, and who will it be handled by? And also, we also know that we've seen a number of your NEC members saying that the step-aside regulation or resolution is being used to target the Secretary General. If you can just add on to that. And my last question, we heard from the President as well saying that there will be some sort of retreat. If you can just give us an indication of when can we expect this. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mbali. Sidi Madia from Eyewitness News. My colleagues have asked questions about the timelines regarding the suspended Secretary General. I just wanted to find out, there is an issue around the appeal. You know, when you look at Rule 25.70, it says it's a temporary suspension, and I think it's implemented based on protecting the image of the organization against the actions of an individual. In this case, obviously, Ace Magashule. He says he's appealed. How does it work? Because it doesn't seem to allow for room to appeal, while the guidelines actually create room for that. I just wanted clarity on that. Can we ask for the overall number of people who were asked to step aside, who have stepped aside, who has been issued suspension letters? And my last one for now, the issue around the targeted campaign that you speak of. You mentioned the RET forces. You also mentioned former General Mojo Mutau. When did the ANC move from indulging the former general, because I understand it's met him before, to deciding it's part of a targeted campaign? Thank you.
Abongile Tumago, SABC News. Just to add on what my colleague Juanita asked about the Secretary General in coming forth and making that apology, do we know yet how you guys expect him to make that apology? Does he call a press conference? Does he write a letter to you and make an announcement? How? And then number two, with regards to the leaks that you've made reference to, Madam Duarte, the fact that it's a concern, I've also read over the weekend that it's a concern to you, that you're going to take legal action against those who are sort of doing this thing of leaking these audios. Do you know who are those people who have done that? has that thing, as far as the legal part of it is concerned, taken place? Thank you.
Okay, Gavin.
Thank you so much. It's Govan from ENCA. I'd like to know whether the people that have voluntarily stepped aside are bound by the conditions of a temporary suspension. More directly, will people who have stepped aside voluntarily be allowed to contest for positions at regional and provincial conferences? To the Deputy SG, the elections are quite close, even if the date moves a bit, if we can assume it's going to be held this year. Considering the evidence in 2016 that internal fighting within the ANC has a direct impact on crucial areas where local government elections are held, such as Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay, where the candidate was disputed, what is the ANC's assessment of what this period is likely to result in at the polls?
Okay, there are questions here, DSG.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Steve Wefegeta from Sowetan. I just want to ask, on the part of the ANC Youth League, the NYTT, I remember when they were being unveiled or their names being announced as the 35-team member team, there was a question coming from us in terms of, did you assure yourselves, because sometimes they use usually this tendency where people who are leading the ANC Youth League are found to be above 35. And there was this direct question that was very specific. Did you ensure that this team that is here it meets the constitutional requirements of the ANC Youth League Constitution? And there was assurance on the part of the ANC leadership that no, everything is above board. But now one is surprised when even more than 5 members, not one, are found to be over age in violation of that very constitution. How did the process of appointing them, of selecting them take place such that they would even bypass that scrutiny? And how did you find out, like way after a month after they were actually announced?
Thanks, DSG. There are a few questions as well coming from the WhatsApp line. Stembile from Bloomberg. Is there a particular reason why the timeline for the SG to apologize has not been stated? If not, how long does he have? Was anything decided on actions which will be taken against those who refuse to work with the Commission of Inquiry? Is the former president amongst those who will be suspended? In this case, for the trial, set to get underway next month, and asked to step aside as ex-officio member of the NEC. This is now Sianda Sitole from the Witness newspaper. When is the exact date that the SG will come to apologize in public? Will the ANC have the Special National Conference as the branches have asked? Okay, Zintle again from Independent Media. What's the ANC's plans for campaigning ahead of the elections and ensuring campaigning sticks to COVID-19 regulations? There are worries about another India situation where campaigning adds to people gathering in numbers. That's what we got online. Thanks, TSG.
Okay, thank you very much. Firstly, let me just say that there is a suggestion that the SG should apologize in... Oh, I really don't want to do that. But I'll do it, although I'm saying very openly that you're asking me to, so that none of you change your mind, So don't change your mind. I understand. Thank you very much. Okay, the NEC decision is that the Secretary General should apologize to the ANC community and also to South Africans. Firstly, this letter that suspends a sitting president in a manner that it was done could have had many repercussions and would have perhaps had repercussions. People started calling from other countries to verify. So there is a need for a retraction of that statement made by the SG. Nevertheless, the NEC is very clear that there is no legal basis in our constitution for that to have been done, in the ANC constitution even. And therefore, the suggestion was to request the SG to do so within 48 hours. And the President made that at the end of his statement, although in the NEC body, there was no timeline given. And I just want to be clear about that. We're hoping that within this week, we will see the SG doing so, hopefully. And we would really encourage him to do so. Juanita, firstly, the step-aside guidelines for ANC permanent people is that no one will be asked to step aside and not be paid. We're very acutely aware of the fact that we cannot make that decision with regard to people who are in the National Assembly. And for instance, the only thing we can decide and have decided is that those people cannot serve in any executive position within the National Assembly. So I don't know about the statement you make about full pay there. There we have asked that Parliament will guide us as to what will happen. If somebody is a chairperson and then they become an ordinary member of Parliament, what happens, and can you change in terms of labor laws, can you change people's pay grades? And Parliament will give us guidance there. Rule 25.70 does not make any provision for appeal because it is a provision that is in favor of the ANC entirely. However, in the debate and discussions, there is a view that people ought to be able to have a way of interacting with the ANC about the reasons for their suspension, even if it is temporary. And for that reason, the concept of an appeals team is being considered, and we put it in the guidelines, but did not mention names. Because we would like to, first of all, consult the people, but also examine whether or not people could not use the existing appeals processes within the ANC, like the NDCA, which is existing, to make an appeal. However, this particular temporary suspension, I just want to reiterate, is purely a defensive suspension to defend the ANC itself. It does not argue against people's rights in any way in the rule. So we still have to look at what rights people have. We have recourse in the ANC for appeals, and it's either going to be the appeals ad hoc committee that's been set up, or the NDCA, and the Treasurer General has been tasked with giving that solution as a matter of urgency, in fact, by today. So the indulgence to the ANC never refuses to listen to anybody. Even if you stand in the street and insult us, we'll give you a hearing, we'll listen to you. But that doesn't mean that we don't have the capacity and capability to analyze your behavior as you go forward. And the behavior of the RET groupings and the utterances being made by General Mudau does directly assault the ANC's ability to continue to hold together and to try to build unity across the ANC. The better option would be for anyone who has a difference of opinion to understand that the ANC is a democratic organization. You're able to make very, very difficult claims and criticisms without threatening annihilation of the organization, which we will not allow. Basically, that's what the NEC is saying. We will defend the ANC, and it is our responsibility to do so. Against people who, for example, in their papers talk about going back to population being classified as European and African and Asian, for instance. So there's a lot of issues that really clearly need to be discussed. Secondly, people who are attacking the constitutional democracy that we have adopted. And we're looking at the content now rather than the individuals. So yes, those are the individuals, but the content is problematic. And it needs to be raised and it needs to be debated. And we're not saying that we will not talk to anyone ever again. There's no such thing in the ANC. We will. But we're not going to be afraid to defend the ANC. And I think that must be quite clearly said here and understood. Those who step aside voluntarily I think there are people in the ANC who've stepped aside voluntarily based on their conscience. And a number of them were two of them in various legislatures have stepped aside. In the case of one person, Comrade, he's waited 5 years for the NPA to take him to court. And it's 5 long years, patiently waiting, very disciplined. And there has to be an end to this waiting period that people have from the date that they are criminally charged to the time that they actually finally appear in a court of law that makes a determination. You cannot continue along a trajectory where people are charged and they are told we're still investigating. A charge is a charge. You either charge or you don't. So they are allowed, look, branches nominate people, we don't. So if branches nominate any of these people who have been asked to step aside because they face criminal charges, the branch would have to be advised that that person, nominations come in packages when they come. They would have to be advised that the person does face a criminal charge. If they insist that they want to go ahead with their nomination and they elect that person, the person would simply have to step aside again after they've... So it's a difficult one, but it is a right of a person. And you have to protect the right of a branch and the rights of people as well. And I think at the bottom of this is that people are innocent until they are proven guilty, and that's very important. But at the same time, the ANC, you join the ANC voluntarily. And if you join an organization and an institution voluntarily, you also have to abide by the rules that that organization sets up. Somebody who asked the question also explained himself and said, well, I belong to a golf club, interesting choice, and I can't park in the space where the president of the golf club parks, and if I do, I pay a fine. So if you join the ANC voluntarily, you also take an oath when you join the ANC. And you also agree to abide by the ANC's constitution. And therefore, you make a voluntary choice to be a member of the ANC. And therefore, the ANC's rules and regulations would apply to you. You may argue against them, and you may have many different arguments, but the rules would apply. We have appointed an elections committee to deal with the processes of selection of councillors to become ward councillors for the ANC. We're hoping that this time around, the element that we introduced of taking the nominations from a branch to the community will be seriously considered as the most important element of that process. If that process is adhered to and nobody in the NEC, PECs and RECs try to change that choice of an ANC member whom the community wants, then we will not have problems. But it must be an ANC member, let me be very clear. We will go to a community meeting, but the community also has to accept that we need to field a person who's a member of our organization and not insist on a person who's not a member of the ANC to become an ANC councillor. I hope that is clear. Did we assure that I think that there was a check done, but what the people who did the check, they understood it in the following manner, that you are 35 until your 36th birthday. And that is not what the constitution of the ANC Youth League says. And that is why we took it back to the NEC. And that's where decisions are made and corrected if they are wrong. To review that and to ensure that we're very clear that on the day that you turn 35, you have to depart from the ANC Youth League. And I hope that's very clear, and it is in the constitution of the ANC Youth League, which must apply. I think I've answered Bloomberg's question. What will happen to people who refuse to go to the Commission of Inquiry? Will we take action? We didn't discuss that. So I can't give an answer, and I'm not, I can't just give an answer from where there was no discussion. On a special national conference, our constitution says that we could have a special national conference if 75% of ANC branches in good standing make such a demand. We've not had that. We've seen a group in KZN asking for that thus far. So, you can only really take it seriously when it is at that level. And it has to be 75% of the branches who make that request for a special national conference to happen. Our campaign plans, I will not share our campaign plans with you. Unfortunately, I just have to say that very openly. Nobody does that. We will make sure that we do not campaign in a manner that is going to put any life at risk or become or add to the crisis of COVID-19. But I think it wouldn't be right for the media to ask us to share our campaign plans with you so that, our opposition can know. We need to surprise the opposition with our campaign plans. It has to be a surprise. It has to be exciting. Thank you very much. Sorry? We didn't agree on a date of the retreat. We agreed that we would have a retreat. We didn't agree on a date for such a retreat.
There are a few online questions, DSG. You're complaining that the mask was hiding your face, the newsroom. Oh, you want...
Is it not 5 to 4 yet?
No, it's still 5:30. Still can do 10 minutes. Okay, we have got one question from Jan Dilange Fraport. The ANC want to reduce staff by 50%. What is the remuneration level of former ministers who are now employed in Lithuli House? And they say in brackets, Malusi, Kigaba, Nomvola, etc. Will they also be reduced in numbers? That's the only question. I think there's a question also that came from Lizeka. Lizeka Tando, Mail and Guardian. DSG, can you share if there will be an independent body that will be reviewing the appeals? How will this process work? Also with the local government elections, can you share if the mayoral candidates will be selected from the regions or will the NEC also make a suggestion? Those are the two. Is the follow-up? Okay, the DSG has got to go by 5 to 4. She has got another meeting. So we've got to just... Okay, Gavin, CD.
Thank you so much. It's Gavin again. I just wanted to check whether any disciplinary action has been taken against so-called radical economic transformation forces. And secondly, is the ANC ready to disclose its funders in accordance with the Political Party Funding Act? Will you be able to do so before these elections?
CD Madia, CD Madia, Eyewitness News. Just a quick question, just going back to my question about the number of people who stepped aside and those who served as legislators. I'm asking for the actual...
Sorry, yeah.
Still asking for the actual numbers. About the ANC's finances, it's been making headlines. Is this party completely broke? What is the status? What is actually happening? I'm distracted by my colleagues. There's another question I need to ask. About the Free State. What are the actual timelines? You have been speaking about a political solution for a while. What are the timelines towards supposedly a provincial task team? Thank you.
Okay. Okay. No, those are the.
Many thanks.
Yes.
Okay, let me first say to Jan de Lange, I'm not going to reveal, nobody tells people how much people earn. And I think that's really not a correct and proper question to be asking. We don't do that. Why would we do that? You know, the unfortunate part of that leak was that the Treasurer General was explaining that since the deadline of April, when the funders of the ANC are now required to make themselves known. See, it is not just the ANC that must put it in an annual report. I just want to explain that as well. We don't, every time we receive a bit of funding, no, it goes into an annual report. Funders have been reluctant to fund the ANC. That is the fact of the matter. Because many people who funded the ANC may also have been funding other political parties, frankly speaking. So they don't want to be known that they funded the ANC, or they fund the ANC and they believe that it might be bad for business. Let's put it bluntly. Or that it was good for business at a time is no longer so. It is a difficult one, but let me just reiterate. It is the ANC who asked for this Party Political Funding Act. Can I just repeat that? Because there seems to be some idea that we are against it. We asked for it. We knew that there would be consequences. And the reason we asked for it was so that we could deal with a matter of how do you support and fund democracy in a democratic state. And that's where we want to go to. It's difficult. I'm not going to stand here and say we're not having financial difficulties. It's a well-known reality. But I also don't think that the ANC is going to cave in because of that. We will find a way to survive legally, above board, and we will report in our annual report when the time comes and when we're ready to do so, and not before that. I also think that it was an unfortunate, sensational way that it went out to the public when it reduced staff by 50%. The labor law does not allow us to simply willy-nilly reduce staff by 50%. We have to go through various processes if indeed we make such a critical decision. And if we have to make that decision, we will do so using labor laws and being very legal about it and making sure that we do it in a way that is fair and is just. It cannot be done in an unfair and unjust manner, and we won't be unfair and we won't be unjust at all. So, yeah, I mean, kudos to the person who thought, wow, what a big find. I still think it's very wrong to sneak into a person's private meeting and put out what you think is sensational without the whole discussion being put out. And that's the unfair part. What we do is about mayoral candidates. We do not select mayoral candidates ahead of the election. What we do is we ask the provinces to discuss with regions. In the case of metros, the province makes recommendations to the NEC about metro mayors. The NEC will discuss those with the province, and we will collectively decide who the best person would be for the mayoral candidate for a metro mayor. In the case of district municipalities, provinces and regions sit together and they discuss the regional and the mayoral candidate that the ANC caucuses will vote for, and which would be the best candidates, and they consult with the NEC as well. And in the case of the local authorities, usually the local municipal authorities is by and large left to the province and the region to sort out. The ANC is concerned now about metros and, of course, the district, where a district is right now, the 53 districts, and who mayoral candidates will be for that. We would want people who are able to run the business of a city very well. A city like Johannesburg has a huge budget and has to be dealt with very, very circumspectly. Tshwane, similarly, difficulties we've had with others is that there's been confusion, and there shouldn't be confusion. The NEC reserves the right to have a say in who district and what's it called? District and metro mayors are. And I don't believe that can be a problem, because if we win an election as a political party, we surely must have a right to decide as well who leads us and where they lead us. But I think that's... on the Free State, Tsidi, I'm not sure whether we want to put pressure on Comrade Kgalema at this point to say if you must finish in a month's time. The conflict in the Free State is old conflict. And we've all tried to bring together the two very dominant factions that have been vying and fighting for control of the Free State. Comrade Kgalema is attempting to take away the notion of control and implant the notion of service. And that's a different discussion altogether. And so it might take us a month or two to get there, but he's working extremely hard with the team that's working with him, and we're hoping for a proper provincial conference to arise out of that, or an interim provincial committee, whichever is the one that he emerges from in the deliberations that he's having. How many? From the NEC, only 2. From the various provinces, we're still receiving provincial reports about people who have been criminally charged. So the provinces are already acting on their own. And at last count, on Friday, we had received something over 30 people that covered the spectrum of provinces throughout the country who had been criminally charged and are awaiting trial, as it were. So, yeah, there may be less, there may be more. Some names that were on the list we pointed out to the provinces were names where the courts had withdrawn the charges. So they were charged, and the courts had withdrawn the charges. So there's still an ongoing process there. Sorry, I can't be more specific. We're struggling. Let me say broke means you have nothing at all. We have a cash flow problem because the funders that we traditionally relied on have stepped back.
Just a quick step down. Sorry, I know time. I know. A quick step down. Yesterday, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke about the threats that you've been receiving. I don't know if you can maybe just talk us through what that's been like for you in trying to do a job mandated to you by the ANC. And getting insults, hurled at you, threats, to a point where you managed to turn to law enforcement?
You know what? I don't want to talk about myself. I took what disturbed me to the right forum for discussion. And I believe that I received support from the National Executive Committee for continuing to do the work that I have to do and am mandated to do. By and large, the kind of threats were very misogynistic, very racist, actually, which is unfortunate. The Twitter people were, let me say, the kind of things people say on Twitter is disgusting. And there's no other way to describe what people say on Facebook and Twitter. And there's no recourse that you can take, except to report to Twitter and report to Facebook, which I have done. There have been phone calls from a particular number and checked it out. It's not recorded. I am very worried about that because we're supposed to record every number. This particular number is not recorded. and that was the most difficult and unacceptable one. But I'm not going to, I don't want to make this about myself. I have been tasked with a job. I will work with a collective. We met this morning. I never work as an individual. I will never work without consultation, and I will never act on my own. I will defend, and we will defend the Constitution and the resolutions of the ANC and implement those that need to be implemented and the decisions of the NEC without fear and without favor. And I hope that that would be understood by everyone. Thank you very much, Tsidi.
Okay. No, we're done now, DSG. Okay, thanks to the members of the media. Some of the questions that they were asking online are the same questions that Tsidi just asked now. So I'm sure those that are watching would have been clarified. Thank you very much for making the time. We rely on you to make sure that the message of the ANC is best understood out there. So do not tire. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, so you can check there for reference.